Kyle's good to go.
All right, welcome back. Fast flying morning Hasidus 7:45.
Oh yeah.
All right. So at the end of the last class, we got a little complicated there. So let's do a little review. We spoke about how the Ayn Sof is lamata mata adin tachlis. The Ayn Sof goes infinitely low. And we said what that means is that no matter where you'll find yourself in the state of Ishtalshalus, even the lowest place, you can still make out that there's a infinite light present, because the number of things in each place is infinite, and the types of things in each place is infinite. You can never really get to the bottom of how many things there are even in this physical world, and how many different types of things there are in this physical world. Yeah, even in this physical world, even though everything in the physical world is finite, to the ultimate degree of how, that's why it's called the Tachton.
Oh, it's an infinite amount of
infinite amount of things and a different type of things. But everything is as finite as you can be. So in other words, Hashem is going down through the Ishtalshalus very, very low. That's why it's called the Ayn Sof is Lamata Mata. There is such a thing as going low, and the aura becoming concealed and more concealed and more concealed. We said the main concealment is when it goes into the Galgalim and the Kochavim and the Mazalos, and it goes into the constellations and Mamash turns physical. So now it looks like everything's giving physical influence as opposed to godly influence. Even in that state, though, you could still make out that the Ayn Sof is there. That's what we said is Lamata Mata in Tachlis, yeah? Now, then we said a big chiddush is that even though when it goes to every place, no matter how far it goes, it does not change. Because if it changed, if something happened to it, it wouldn't be the Ayn Sof anymore. The Ayn Sof is something eternal and infinite, which therefore cannot really change. It can't get warm or cold. It can't turn summer and winter. So what's going on when we see all this summer and winter, warm and cold? When you see this change, it means the light that's come into the vessel has actually been affected by the vessel, and whatever happens with the vessel also happens to the light. It sounds like the light does get changed. We said, for example, when the soul comes into the body. This is not like the Ayn Sof. This is an example of what's not going on. But when the soul comes to the body, the soul grows wiser as the brain becomes bigger. The soul gets more emotionally developed. As the body becomes bigger, the soul can hurt itself if the body hurts itself. So in other words, there's a total investiture of the light into the vessel to the point that the light actually makes a change in the vessel. The Ayn Sof being in every place is there in a way that it's not like that. Because nothing happens to it. It doesn't get affected. And we said that the way that this happens is because it's with this that you see that light goes into a vessel and gets changed, it's because it's coming from what's called a koach, the koach of Hashem, not, so to speak, the direct light of Hashem. And what is a koach? Koach is this, even a human being has something called a koach, which it looks like you exude something from your body, something of a yesh ma'ayin. Even man has this concept that it's not yesh ma'ayin obviously by man, but it looks like it to a certain degree, that you can make a painting and your energy is in there and the painting is in the shuk, far away from you, and like your energy is totally disconnected from your body, and you can't tell anymore the relationship of the painting to the painter, right? It's like when a person throws a ball, he like exudes out of his goof, out of his body, an energy which now is not in his body and carrying this ball and giving life to this energy, so it, so to speak, escapes or leaves Hashem, right? And once it leaves Hashem, so to speak, and we'll explain what that means a little bit in a second, then it's no longer affecting, whatever happens to it is no longer happening to the Ayn Sof, to Hashem, and therefore all kinds of changes and things can happen to it, and those changes do not create an effect or change in the actual light. So it creates like sort of this like realm of separateness, which is not really part of him. And in that place there's all kinds of change and things going on, but while those changes are happening, the changes don't grab onto and make a change in the Ayn Sof itself. Does anyone understand that? So, just to flush it out a little bit more, because why not? We're mamish right in this chapter of Tanya. The chapters 20 and 21 of Tanya really go into this in a great detail. And we said it last class as well, that you have the idea of Hashem's speech, right? We call the world is created by Hashem's speech. Daniel, maybe you'll come join us.
It's like we're going to
Right here. Hashem's speech, we said one word is nothing compared to the whole faculty of speech. And the faculty of speech is nothing compared to the faculty of intellect. Of thought. And the faculty, here, right over here, Daniel. The faculty of thought is nothing compared, I meant over here, it's a good spot.
No, but he's still.
Yeah.
No, the other guy. This guy.
Okay.
Sema.
This computer needs a whiteboard. I don't want any equipment around it because it's a tool.
Yeah.
That's all.
And other computers.
Let's continue.
So if you sat here, I have to move it into this copy and he never moves his copy.
That's fine.
Shall we? Okay. So, the faculty of speech is nothing compared to the faculty of thought. The faculty of thought is nothing compared to the faculty of emotion, which is producing that thought. The faculty of emotion is nothing compared to the faculty of intellect, which is producing that emotion. Right? So by the time the speech comes out, what is it? It's basically a huge tzimtzum from intellect to emotion, from emotion to thought, from thought to speech, and then from the faculty of speech to one word coming out. That represents the idea of koach, right? That it's basically, what's the idea of speech? That it finally leaves Hashem. When a person speaks, the pre-levels of speech, thought, emotion, and intellect are happening inside of him. So if anything happens, so to speak, to the intellect, it actually does happen to Hashem in a certain sense, let's say. But when it comes out of speech, this notion of speech means that whatever's taking place is actually left Hashem. It's out. So there's two things there. That it's unbelievably small. It's a contraction of a contraction of a contraction. The amount of life force that goes into the things that are in this dimension of outside of Hashem and therefore relevant to change is an unbelievably small amount of light. But the idea is that it's outside of him. So therefore whatever happens there doesn't affect him. It doesn't make any change by him. So that's stage one. Stage two of this idea is that you can't compare Hashem's speech to our speech. That when we speak, it actually leaves us and goes somewhere else. But when by Hashem it says there's no place other than Him. Where's it going to go out of? So it doesn't actually go anywhere, and therefore it doesn't. The idea behind it is that it doesn't actually really exist. It's sort of like the idea of a person's speech before it leaves his faculty of speech. It's just one potential word inside of his faculty of speech, not that he spoke out. And then the whole faculty of speech is a theoretical thing which is in potential inside the faculty of his thoughts. And all of his thought process is a potential inside the faculties of his emotions. And all of his emotions are only potential things that could come out of a person's intellect. So when all of it is still in a potential state, unlike a person who actually speaks, when it all like hatches. And the emotion leaves the intellect, and the thought leaves the emotion, and the speech leaves the thought. By Hashem, nothing happens. So it's all the word is tucked away inside in all those potential states, because the tzimtzum that took place to make it, so to speak, come out didn't happen l'chatchila as far as Hashem is concerned. It only happened as far as the ones on the other side of the tzimtzum are concerned. This is basically yesterday and 2 days ago the Tanya. So if you don't understand what I'm saying, we need to discuss this so you can understand the Tanya. But what we're saying is that, first of all, let's look at it like this. The tzimtzum that takes place, which enables, so to speak, an empty domain, and then for speech to go in that domain. Right? That there could be like a place outside of Hashem, where Hashem can speak into that place, and it's like Him over here and the world over there. That's not really happening, if anyone didn't get the memo. Right?
It never leaves him.
It never, in other words, that while there is a tzimtzum, but what we say is that the tzimtzum is only lagabenu. The tzimtzum is only taking place as far as we're concerned. In other words, Hashem is simultaneously filling that space and making it look to us as though He's not filling that space at the same time. So all this like immense reduction of godliness happens so that we feel like we've just been spit out of Hashem's mouth and we like exist independently and we're separate from Him and He's over there. But in reality, that whole experience only happened as far as we're concerned. The reality of the situation is that He has not made any of those contractions as far as He's concerned. And we call that kachashecha ka'ora. Darkness is like light as far as He's concerned. Just like we said in our Maimer on Shabbos, that when a teacher is going to have to like remove all the depth of his intellect in order to bring out a small point that a simple student could understand, he doesn't actually forget all the things that he knew before. The contraction is only like an apparent contraction. The teacher is still aware of all of his deeper ideas. They didn't go anywhere. He's just hiding them from the student so that the smaller idea could emerge. But the reality is that as far as he's concerned, nothing ever actually emerges in Hashem. It only emerges on the standpoint of us. Making sense? So therefore, let's go back to the Maimer now. Right? There was a big detour, but it was all in order to explain that while Hashem is producing a world of change, and he's making light, which is actually malleable, and goes inside of things, and when the things change, the light is affected, that whole experience of like a changing world is only with this level of koach, which is essentially Hashem's ability to spit something out, and therefore, yes, at that level, he allows the light to become so small that it can like changes can happen to it. However, there's two different problems here. One, that's not touching the light of Hashem. It's like something, this wondrous power of His that it's something that's happening which is not actually affecting Him in any way, right? It's not really, He's surrounding and in it, and all while it's going on, it's not doing anything to Him. He's like an unchanged entity while this is happening inside of Him. And two, it's not affecting Him, and it never actually even takes place, really, because it only takes place in a theoretical world where the koach actually hatches and something happens. But it's all happening inside of Him where it never really gets off the ground to begin with, except for to us. So we experience all this change and so forth, but we don't realize it's like a blanket of eternality which is actually flowing through us and negating all sense of summer, winter, hot, cold. At every moment, just we're not privy to see it. So therefore, if that's the real situation, none of this is affecting that, right? Because this is not really happening except to us. It's very complicated. You understand?
I think so.
Okay, then it's not complicated. Let's go on. So, and this is what it says, Kamosha Kasuf. I mean, I'd be very happy if everyone understood. I'm not sure I understand, but we'll try our best.
I think so. I didn't say I understand.
Listen, I don't know. That's basically, those are the words. To visualize it and to understand it and to grasp it, let's read on a little bit and see if we can get more clarity. It gives a few more mashalim here that could help us. So at page 135, just about the center of the page, the last line, the last couple words after a period. Kamosha Kasuf. Ayn Kadosh Ka Hashem. Right, so it says, right, there's no such holiness as Hashem. Be'is Zohar, it says in the Zohar, Kama Kedishin Ninun. There are actually many levels of Kodesh, but Leis Kodesh Ka Hashem, but none of them are Kodesh Ka Hashem. Right? What does it mean? The Kadosh Hashem Eino Kamo Kama Kedishin the Seder Ishtalshlus. That the real Kadosh Ka Hashem, Kadosh of course means removed, right? Separated. Holy, is not this. The Kadosh of Hashem is not the same Kadosh that's found inside of the Seder Ishtalshlus. There's two levels of separateness. The Kedishin the Seder Ishtalshlus, who should Kadosh umuvdal. Right? Is the idea? There is a concept that within the Seder Ishtalshlus, all right, there can be a removedness and a separateness, one level from the other. Getushasam. And what is their kedusha? What is their separateness? She'enam ba'im b'islavshus. Their kedusha is that they do not come into a state of investiture into something lower than them. So, for example, you could say the world of Yetzirah is kadosh and muvdal, separated from this world that we're in, right? Which means that it is here in every way, right? In other words, we're taking place within it, but it does not enter into and invest itself at the level of Yetzirah light without a huge contraction into the vessels of this world, right? In other words, for Yetzirah light to come into this cup of water, it has to contract itself and change the nature of its light to be a different type of light so that it can be small enough to fit into a plastic cup, right? And it can make the plastic cup and the water within.
Size or nature?
Just the nature of it has to basically go down in a spiritual, volume, or whatever it is, frequency, that it will no longer be at the state of light of Yetzirah. It will be the light of Asiyah, and then it can materialize in a physical world. But the light of Yetzirah itself cannot materialize in the physical world. Right? And that's why we can't see it here. Because it stays removed from this place. It's like flowing through us. Right? But it stays removed in the sense that it cannot be seen in the vessels that we have here. Because it doesn't invest itself. It doesn't allow itself to be invested into this lowly state of a vessel.
Does it in the lower worlds, perhaps?
No, it's a higher world. So here's the point. However, there are vessels of Yetzirah. And in Yetzirah, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And the light of Yetzirah does go nicely into those vessels. And that's the thing. It's Kadosh because it's Kadosh from us. But it's not implicitly and essentially Kadosh, because wherever it is invested into its vessels. And it is being grasped by something that can limit it. And therefore, theoretically, whatever happens to the entities of Yetzirah will affect the light of Yetzirah. They're also subject to change. So while they're called Kadosh, they're only relatively Kadosh. They're Kadosh from our experience, but they're not essentially Kadosh, because in their experience, they're still invested into something, and they still undergo change. And if they undergo change, they're not the Ayn Sof mamish. Because the Ayn Sof doesn't undergo any change. Is it clear what I just said?
Yeah. I mean, the Yetzirah, Yetzirah also has like light vessels, but this light vessel it's still not Ayn Sof, it's still not Kadosh.
Kashem.
Kashem.
Right, but it's Kadosh, not Kadosh Kashem.
Uh-huh.
That's what he's saying. Ain Kadosh Kashem is like a very specific term now. Usually it would just be, there's no one holy like Hashem. But now we mean there's no one, literally, there's plenty of people that are holy. No one's holy like Hashem, like the Ayn Sof. And this is what it means to be holy. It means holy means that you're removed, you're untouchable, right? But there's relative untouchable and there's absolute untouchable. And so all the Kadeshim of the Seder Ishtalshalus, they're relatively untouchable to the world that's below them. But the world they're in, the light in them is grasped and manipulated, and therefore changeable.
What happens in those worlds besides for like just like I guess like going down like what other
All the things that happen in this world happens in those worlds.
Oh really?
Yeah, because there's no blade of grass that grows without an angel striking it and saying grow. Which means that every blade of grass that grows here is growing there, and it's growing there, and it's growing there. And Gavoa ma'al Gavoa, it says higher and higher and higher. And this is basically, we affect them by our actions, they affect us by their actions. In other words, there's a whole, the ladder, the angels going up and the angels coming down. So there's influences that are coming, so to speak, from Hashem to like sort of create the world, bring nature into place. There's also the influences from the behavior of man that affects how that flow is going to come down. So whatever, there's just an infinite number of
Are there people there
systems.
like us? Like we are there too? Like,
There's souls there. They're not. I don't know if you can call them people in the sense that they don't have physical bodies and they can't do mitzvahs. But they are. Your soul is there. Your soul is in every world. It's the penimius, as we said in the previous class, of every single world, like an umbilical cord attaching you to the Ayn Sof. It comes down through every single world. And your body, in a certain sense, is there. In other words, the spiritual dimension of your body is in Yetzirah. The Bria dimension of your body is in Bria. And in other words, all the things that are here have a spiritual correspondent and counterpart in all the worlds.
So it's like connected them, so to speak. Like,
Yeah.
Get down this energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have a question?
The Ayn Sof can't be changed,
Right.
but it bestows change. Yeah? Life? Change?
Well, that's the thing, is like something comes out of it, so to speak, which is not it anymore, this koach. It's really what we always talk about, the power of yesh ma'ayin. That you can have something from nothing, right? Which means that the only way to have something from nothing is if nothing of the original goes into the thing that's being created. We talked about this also yesterday in Shabbos in the class, right? If Hashem would even let one drop of light from His original Ayn Sof into the dimension which would be called the creation, there would be no creation, right? Because we already said any matter, any small amount of the infinite light would not allow any existence to be. So therefore, what is it that He exudes that makes the being? Clearly it's not any of Him, because if any of Him would go in there, wouldn't He be able to be there? So what is it? right? So it's this crazy thing that's basically almost inexplicable. We have like sort of words that can somewhat describe it. But it's really what's called something from nothing, right? Which means nothing of him goes in, and it's like, nonetheless, there it is. And that's why it's able to exist without affecting him, because he's not inside of it, right? So whatever, but I mean, so what is inside of it if he's not inside of it? How does it have any life force, right? So we're saying it does have a certain life force, but it's a life force called koach. It's like a different thing. It's like, for example, although it's a very weak example, but it's like as close as we can get, that you can sort of exude something out of your body, like I'll throw a football and then they'll walk away in the other direction, and the energy you put into the football has absolutely no bearing on the rest of your day, right? It's like not affecting you in any way. Except the difference is that does affect you a little bit. You exert yourself to put yourself into it. You're like a little bit weaker now, right? So it's not 100% accurate, the mashal. But in a certain sense, the idea that something could just exude out of Hashem, which absolutely has zero effect on him, and it's like nothing happened to him at all, and that's the idea of what all the light that's in the world, that's how much of God is in there. Nothing. So while all this change and all the big hoopla is going on, and we're all excited about Ak and Keser and Atzilus and Bri and Yetzirah, all that is basically nothing of Hashem. Right?
Mendel would challenge you on that.
Mendel?
That's what he said. I don't know.
I don't think so. Anyway,
Okay.
where is Mendel?
Everybody, isn't there godliness in everything?
What's that?
Isn't there a part of God in every single thing in creation and existence?
Of course. So what I'm saying is that I'm saying that what is this nothing? What is this something from nothing?
What is that?
So I'm saying it's this koach, right? It's this like.
This koach is a prayer of Hashem.
The only thing is that it's really it's a part of Hashem, but it's like it's a part of that Hashem has to invent, so to speak, which is such a minute aspect of
He
him.
doesn't really invent it. He just because like you said, he can't like.
Put it like this. Let me just remind you, like it's a little bit of a tongue twister. We can't just we can get into a place where like it doesn't make sense our words anymore. So that's why we have to remember the analogies that we're building on, right? Yeah. We know that the world cannot exist if even a drop of light would be in it because too much powerful. Mm-hmm. And yet the world exists, which means not a drop of light is in it. Right? And yet you're right. We have to say there's nothing but Hashem. He's for sure in it, right? So you just walked into mamash an unbelievable contradiction. So we're trying to unearth like what is that contradiction based on, and that's the way we're describing it is that the aspect of divine light, which so to speak is exuded from Hashem, is a type of divine light, which in a way is not really any of Him. It's some other weird power. Which has the ability. This is why we can't really explain this, because this power does not exist in anything except Hashem Himself. Nothing can create something from nothing except for God. So that's why it's very hard for us to understand what this is, right? But if all of a sudden you could just manifest without even thinking about it, with nothing, no interest of yourself going into it, but just like a valley filled with golden coins outside, right? Just like without even any effort, right? So where did it come from? So there is some aspect of you that it came out of, but it's not like called sort of. It's the best way of understanding it is the notion of speech of a person, right? The minuscule nature of it, right? That what is one speech, one word you're going to say, even compared to your entire faculty of speech, which you could speak Ayn Sof, you can theoretically speak forever. One word doesn't take away anything from you, right? It's not like you've given something in order for that word to happen, because you are just as complete and whole as you were after you said that thing as you were before, because you're not missing anything. It doesn't take one part of you, right? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So what is that? Okay, it's something. It's a something. But we're trying to say that the unbelievable smallness of it is what we're really shooting for here, right? And yet, it's a smallness of it's not like a small, like your pinky. Your pinky is also small, but that would be you without a pinky, God forbid, if you gave that much of yourself into the world. If you actually gave it to the world, and the world now was having your pinky, there'd be one less aspect of you. It doesn't work like that with Hashem. He gives it, and nothing of Him is
hair.
Even a hair. In other words, even a hair is something that is part of you. If I take it off of you, you're one hair down, right? Hashem is not one piece of light down.
It grows back.
Even so, it grows back. It means that like the world takes up somewhat of importance to the infinite Creator. In other words, you can't take, if it's not truly infinite if you can take a piece away, because that means it's changed, right? The fact that it can grow back means more change.
So we don't take a piece from Hashem.
That's right. We take nothing. That's the point. And then you're asking, but what's in the world? So I'm trying to explain to you. It's very complex. It's something called koach. It's like,
Where does it come from?
it's just a power that Hashem has, just like you have the power to say one word, and it doesn't remove. It's almost like if you could light a candle from another candle, it doesn't reduce the light of the original candle, right? It's some kind of magical power that Hashem has to give over like an infinite state of things and yet lose nothing at the same time. Reduce himself in no way.
But wait, so we're in Hashem's thought, like Hashem thinks about us, and like we are sustained, or well, his speech also, right? I mean, like we're all inside of him. So while he's thinking about us, we are sustained. While he's speaking about us, we're sustained.
Sustain.
That's already, yeah, it gets complicated, man. Yeah, you could say that. The aspect of him that's thinking about us sustains us in a world of thought. The aspect of him which is speaking us sustains us in a world of speech, right? But the idea is that, okay, yeah, that you could say that.
It's called another word for life.
It's force, not
And
cause.
also movement. Like if we're looking at the sun and the moon, and we say like they're alive, they have souls, or they were talking and all the things.
Yeah, for sure.
Even down to the atom.
Yeah, for sure.
Everything is moving.
For sure.
And everything has a soul.
Yeah, that's for sure. But what I'm trying to say is that all that life does not reduce or even come really from the life of Hashem. Because he's not putting himself into it. He's not invested into it.
Don't remember where this call come
In a
from.
revealed way.
It comes from God.
So we are from God. We are a part of God.
Yeah.
Right,
It's just
except...
not revealed, right?
No, it's like what we're a part of him, but it's a unique part of him. Just like your energy that's in a football that you just threw is a part of you, right? But it's not a part of you anymore. It's gone to a place where it's not. Whatever's happening with it is not inside of you anymore.
So where does it go? If God, if nothing is different than Hashem.
All right, well, where does it go is a question I'm much more comfortable to answer, but we've already discussed it in this class. But the point is like when you say what's in it, then if it's not him, so I'm trying to explain. Just
I got that. The force
you understand that?
I understand. But
The only and that's also a limited metaphor because it's much more than just you're throwing a football. Because when you throw a football, you actually have to engage yourself and energize yourself, and it takes your. So with God, it's just something happening outside of him which is not affecting him. Now, when you ask where does it go, so you understand that part?
Yeah, I understand.
It's part of God and it's not part of God. But when you ask where does it go, that's a little bit easier, right? The reality is, as far as God is concerned, it doesn't even happen to begin with. Because it's only happening, you only throw the football and exude this energy, right? When you go through, like first you have to desire to throw the football. Then you have to think about how to throw the football. Then you have to say to someone, or like bring me the football, right? There's like a whole Seder Shtalshlus of by the time you want to do it, to you're actually doing it. So that's called, the koach has a very small power, as compared to like your very essence. Or like think about speech instead of the football, right? In order to get one word to come out, you have to go from intellect to emotion to thought to speech to those letters, right? So that's called the tzimtzum. That's called reducing all the you and making it as though one little tiny aspect of you is now surfaced. So that happens only as far as we're concerned, as we said earlier. That this koach like goes somewhere and the world gets going and on its feet and starts to exist through these contractions, and it's like flying through the air like a football, only as far as we're concerned. Because we're the only ones that experience that speech. That idea that it's called speech means that we come out of Hashem's mouth. That means we feel suddenly separate from Him. He's over there, we're over here. That's only an experience that we're having. In reality, the speech is still inside the thought, which is still inside the emotions, which is still inside the intellect, and all of it. It doesn't. But as far as Hashem is concerned, it didn't even go anywhere. So that's your answer to where did it go. It didn't go anywhere, and it didn't happen, and that's the point. Hashem is mamish, it's taking place inside of him, and that's why the Or Ein Sof, going back to the original premise here, is in every single place of the Seder Ishtalshlus, because it didn't actually leave the Or Ein Sof to begin with.
Right.
And no matter what level of the would-be contractions are, so to speak, taking place as far as we're concerned, they're all happening inside the Or Ein Sof, and therefore even in our perspective, you can still see Or Ein Sof like dripping through every one of them.
Yeah.
That's what means the Or Ein Sof is lamata mata arin tachlis. No matter how far these contractions will seemingly go, since they're taking place inside the Or Ein Sof, they're still drenched with Or Ein Sof. Right? And that Or Ein Sof is not even in them as far as they're concerned, because they're not made from the actual Or Ein Sof. They're made from this koach within the Or Ein Sof, which is this theoretical separateness, which is why we can experience change, and there's a godly life force inside of what we're doing here, but it's just so infinitely small and so infinitely negated, it doesn't do anything to the eternality and oneness of Hashem.
Because we're one with Hashem, right? Everything is basically one. There's no difference.
It's inside of him.
Yeah,
That makes
exactly.
sense.
So we're one with him.
Nothing could be outside.
Back to my
anyways.
question from last week, Rabbi. So why aren't we like? Is it possible that we're just like a imagination, or?
So some people want to say that, but it's Chabad Chassid is basically paskins that we're not an imagination, because the tzimtzum in this whole aspect of Hashem contracting himself is a dimension of Hashem. In other words, what's happening in this domain is also true, right? It's just that it doesn't negate the other truth. So there's two simultaneous truths taking place. One is that we're one, and one is that we're experiencing this and many. Now they're both happening. It's not an imagination. It's just that in the bigger picture, this experience is negated out of existence. It's only in this like sort of dimension that we're in does this experience actually have a place. So it's not exactly an imagination, but it's not exactly happening the way we think it is at all either.
How do we connect to God? If we're like in a way separated from Him.
So that's why he
Beetle.
made a little Torah and mitzvahs contraption. Right? That's what the invention of Torah and mitzvahs is. Right? This like wondrous diagram that we sit in here all day long staring at and studying and trying to it's basically like building a structure, like a mishkan. Right? Hashem said, if you want me, I'll show you the instructions to build a box for me in all these worlds. And it's basically that box is the Torah and the mitzvahs. Right? And so when you construct the objects in this world in such and such a way, according to the directions that he sent down here, or he brought down here personally at Har Sinai, so suddenly it's almost like cracking the code, right? That you can open up this dimension and have the essential dimension of the Or Ein Sof flow into this place. And that's what every single time a little Yid does Torah mitzvahs, right? It's a powerful thing. That's why we're sort of drunk on this stuff. Spend your whole life doing it. There's nothing better to do than bring the Or Ein Sof into this low dimension. Wouldn't you think that that's like put that on your resume? I mean, you'll get any job.
Why didn't the forefathers study Chassidus?
They for sure studied Chassidus.
No,
They just weren't allowed to reveal it. Right? This Chassidus is not really new. It just came about in a way that it could be.
Everything was studying about the world.
For sure they knew it. For sure they knew it. I mean, you read the ancient writings; they speak about these things. Atzilus, Bria. Of course. Or Ein Sof. These are not new. Anyway.
Wait, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Okay, so two things. One, what I take from this is that in order for us to experience true reality, we also have to do tzimtzum. Like Hashem does tzimtzum, we have to contract ourselves. Contract ourselves through bitul in order to really let our creations shine, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or
say that.
Yeah. And what does it mean by the world created anew every moment? Like Hashem is speaking as existence, thinking as existence.
Every second he's making this tzimtzum. It's not like he made it once and it's sitting there. He's continuously making the tzimtzum.
Well, why can't he just do it?
He could, but he didn't. That's not how it works. We were informed
Why
that the.
didn't he? I know that he can.
Okay. I don't want to talk about that right now. Okay. So, anyway, going on. So we're saying that there's different levels of kadeshim. There's different levels of holiness. In other words, Yitzira, is holy and removed from here, but it's not implicitly and intrinsically removed because it has its own vessels which capture its light and therefore they're relevant to change. Aval kasher mislabshim, so they're holy because they don't invest. But when they do invest, in other words, into their own world, harihem bechinas tefisa, the light of Yetzirah gets grabbed, i.e., wrapped up inside of a certain vessel, and therefore is manipulated by the vessel and changes. It gets hot, it gets cold, depending on the vessel. But tefisa poel shina, whenever you get grabbed onto something, it makes you relevant to change. Right? That's why it's so important for us to say that Hashem does not enter even a drop of Himself into this creation, because if He did, then the creation would be happening to Him. It would be something that's going on to Him. And we want to make it very clear that He's eternal and unchanging, and all the changing world that's taking place over here is not changing Him, which means He's not putting Himself inside of it. So all these other Kadeshim, it's light that even though it's holy from our perspective, it's like above us on the pecking order, but it's being grasped and therefore manipulated by the world that it's in and changing. Not so Kadosh ka Hashem, right? Ayn Kadosh ka Hashem. The Kadosh Hashem is the Bechinas Ha'or. It's the real light. Right? It's the light.
What does it mean, the real light?
It means the Ayn Sof. That part which does not enter into the creation at all. Not even a drop.
That's a fake light? Our light.
It's the Koach light. Right? It's the light which undergoes the contraction in its own mind. Right? And is disconnected in its own reality from Hashem. It's like the words or the football. That's
Koach is speech.
like speech, yeah, like speech. In other words, that idea that comes out of you and it's so contracted.
In a way, it came out of him but stayed inside of him.
Yes. That created the world, and that's relevant to change and grasp and manipulation. And the reason that it can be like that is because it's not happening to Hashem. It's happening in some dimension which He is aloof from. Yeah. This is not compared to the type of Kadosh which is happening all throughout the worlds. Because He does not invest. There's no going in. Zero of Him went in, if you recall. Something from nothing. Because Shebabi Slavshus. Sorry. Yeah. Now here's the interesting thing, that you might think, therefore, because we say nothing of Hashem goes in there, like you were bothered by, that He's not in there. He's for sure in there. It's in Him. Adarabah, the whole thing's taking place in Him. So He is in there, 100%. He's in there loud and clear. The only thing is He's in there in a way where He's not called Hislavshus. He's not enclosed into it. He's in there in a way where everything's happening inside of Him and nothing is happening to Him. Right? So He's sort of just like, it's almost like, it's very hard to describe, but it's basically, He's invested into it in a way where He's not grasped by it.
It's not losing the energy.
Lefishu einu misarev. He doesn't mix in, right? In other words, it's almost like it's described in the Tanya, the union of Soviv Kolomim, like you can take an apple on the table and you could put the whole apple in your mind, right? In other words, you're not going to stick the apple in your mind, but you're going to have you're going to do like one of these like computer things where they can like turn it and scan it every way upside down. You can know it's the nature of every, flavor of it and everything. It's all, and you have mamash the apple spinning around in your mind. You can all picture it in your mind, right? And yet the apple is not affecting you. In other words, it's like it's not really, taking place inside of you. It's not taking up space inside of you, right? That's the point. Whereas the apple could mamish take up place inside of a world, like it comes into context. It's like its boundaries are actually meaningful, but inside the apple of your mind, it is not taking up any place of your mind, right? It's not a meaningful boundaries. And so while your mind is fully surrounding it in every way, it's somehow not, you're not in there at the same time. I don't know, but the difference is that the whole world is that apple to Hashem, right? And the whole world, the physical existence, is actually taking place in Hashem's mind. But the difference is this is physical, whereas that's just a mental picture. but the whole thing is happening in there, and he's like a mind, like flushed throughout the whole thing, and it's not touching him. He's not taking anything away from him. This is what it says in Tanya. It's very. Anyway, what were you going to say? Did you think of a mushal for this?
No, it's just thinking computers. Like the end part sounded like virtual reality, which seems very relevant.
Right.
But then when I suppose I design a 3D model of an apple,
Right.
we have the 3D printers to do,
Right.
which will print out exactly
Right.
what we're talking about. It takes up no space
Right.
in memory.
Mm-hmm.
It's there
Right.
in complete totality,
Right.
but it's not.
Right.
It's taking up no space.
Yeah.
Is that why all
it
these
can
things?
manifest physically, but it's, again, like you said, with God, it's everything for God. In a virtual way, but it's physical too.
Right. And
Right,
the idea is that the whole computer, like soft, like place of the computer, I don't know if there is such a thing, it's flowing into every single aspect of that 3D instructions of the apple. In other words, it's like right? It's almost like I guess a simpler way of looking at it is like the electricity which goes into a toaster oven, right? Before it goes into the toaster oven, that same electricity is in like the mother house of electricity, but it's not taking up place over there. It's like an unseen. I don't know. I'm not having an easy time describing this.
No, I remember last year you used the Marshall 3D printer.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Anyway.
not taking up any space.
Does anybody have one of those?
Yeah.
That's not taking up any space inside the right, and it's inside the computer in the diagram for it, and then when it comes out into the machine, that is tools.
Okay. Let's go one more little drop here.
Which we're not doing, you know?
And that is that we're saying it, even though it's not in there, it's totally in there. It's just in there in a way where it's not, that Ayn Sof is inside of the world, but in a way where the world is not grasping onto it. It's aloof from the world while it's busy inside of every atom of the world. And how is that possible? Because it doesn't mix in. It doesn't come into the framework where the world can come to perception of it and therefore like grab it into its vessels. There's no vessels of the world that can actually hold it, but that doesn't actually limit it from being in every place of the world. And this is like, he says, for example, it has the same principle of light down in this world. We look at the nature of light. Kedugmas or lamata shameir mikom makom einu misarev. There's a type of analogy he's about to give of light that shines into something, and yet the light that's shining through it does not actually get grabbed on by the thing that it's shining through. And he says, for example, light that shines through glass. Yesh zechuchis aduma yeroka v'lavana. You can have red, green, and white glass. Yesh chilukim b'maros elu, and there are very much differences between these appearances. Aval ha'or hayu pashut bilti yesh bo shum mare klal b'maros hazechuchis. And so when you have white light or whatever light it is shining through a red cup or a red window, the light comes out looking like red light. When you have it shining out through green glass, it comes out looking like green light. And white, etc. But what he's trying to say is that the light itself doesn't actually have a color. Right? There is no greenness in the light. Right? The light is inside of there sort of like being totally white light. It's just because it went into a green vessel, so now it looks like it's green. Right? But it's still 100% the same light. The glass cannot actually change the nature of the light. It just changes the way that the light is perceived. So the same thing is true with the vessels of these worlds. The Ayn Sof is shining through them, and because of the vessels, the Ayn Sof comes out looking like it's changing and being manipulated, and all these things are happening. But the light inside is the exact same light, unaffected by the vessel. Just like the white light doesn't turn green just because it shines through a green kli. It's just that it's shining through that. And even though it's shining through it in a way where it obviously does get invested into it, to the point that it's basically in some way grabbed onto by the redness, but nonetheless the light does not actually become red. Right? So while it's in the red prism, right? It's going through the redness, and it's sort of been grasped in a certain way by the red enough to the point that
It appears different.
It appears red, but the light has not really been grabbed onto and manipulated and mamish changed by the red glass. Unlike, for example, your soul when it comes into your body, or light when it actually goes into a vessel. It sees physical sight. It hears physical sounds, whereas when the soul is before it's in your physical body, it doesn't hear physical sounds and see physical sights, because it doesn't get grasped by a vessel and changed and manipulated by the vessel itself. That's the point. It doesn't get grasped and therefore it doesn't get changed. Right? Your soul. So that's what we're saying. Like there's a level of kedusha in the world of Yetzirah, because the world of Yetzirah, it doesn't hear or see physically, because the level of physical goof, right, is not able to bring it inside and change it and manipulate it. Right? But the Ayn Sof is the same way. It basically is found here, and it's activating everything, but it is not being manipulated by and therefore changed and by the thing that it's going through. So that's what we're saying. We're saying it's invested in the thing, but not in a way that the thing can affect change on it. Just like light going through, it's basically the same light. It's hard for us to really see that, but it's like, imagine like the inside of this thing is just the same old light that it was before. What? Because it went into a red glass, it changed the whole dimension and nature of this light? No. It's just like it perceive, because of the kli, it's perceived differently. And so he says, why is that? Lefisha einu misarev. It doesn't get mixed in. It doesn't get grabbed on by the dimension of the vessel. And he says we can understand by way of analogy, example, the light and life force of God, which is enlivening everything, and yet it doesn't get changed at all, because it doesn't ever go into a thing in such a way that the thing can wrap itself around and therefore manipulate the light and change it to its parameters. Right? It just gives it life. It's just the underlying life force, and whatever there is going to be change and parameters and so forth, that's only in this realm called koach, which we spoke about. Ve'ein bo shum hispalus v'shinu, and therefore there's no effect and there's no change. V'kol zehu lefi sha'or hu Ayn Sof be'etzem. And why is that? Because the light is essentially Ayn Sof. Al kain hine gam hispashtuso hu b'chinas Ayn Sof. Therefore he's saying, why do we have to say that it's in every place? Because it's Ayn Sof, it goes forever. There's no place that it cannot be. And yet, it can't change. So we have to explain it in such a way that it's in that place without being manipulated by that place. Shenimshach b'kol ha'madregos ad ha'madrega yoser acharona v'yoser tachtonos. It goes to every single place, no matter how low and pushed off it is. Kama b'roim ha'yoser shfalim b'tachlis. Like the lowest level of creation that you could possibly imagine. It's just like that red glass, right? That really there's Ayn Sof mamash all up in this little slug. It's just that all you see is the slug. You don't see the fact that nothing is changed inside of this light, which is inside of there, and ultimately giving it its true existence. B'kol makom hu nimshach eino mispal ve'eino mishtana. Any place that it's brought to, it doesn't get affected and it doesn't change. Liyosa b'chinas pshitus be'etzem. And since it is essentially one, indivisible, al kain ba berivu ischalkus madregos bli shir ubli gevul klal. And as we already said, because it's essentially one, therefore when it tries to express itself, it expresses itself in literally an infinite number of ways, forever. Because they're trying to describe something which is absolutely undescribable, the descriptions go on without end. And therefore, it's really it that you're seeing inside of everything, but the thing that you're seeing is like some vain attempt to describe it. While it's in there, it's not grabbed by that thing, because none of the things that are trying to describe it can really describe it. This is what it means that it goes infinitely low. That it goes and extends itself in a revealed way until the very lowest places, the end. Tough one. Woo. Wow. I'll hold on to that.
What's that? But I know you're just giving an analogy. Up until the point it hits the leg, it's white. After it